Hi, this is Bonnie, and I had a request from Ellen, Miss Bodie O herself, to talk a little bit about this backpack image that I had posted. And she wanted me to talk about the edges and the corners and how I got them. So first off, there's no magic trick. Anybody can do it. And so I'll just show you and talk a little bit about what I did and how I worked with her vinyl. But first of all, I want to talk about the bag itself. The bag itself, the pattern comes from Soda Kind. I'll put the link below after I post this video. But Jessica Cruzan, that's her business, and she has really unique designs. She doesn't make a lot of patterns, but when she does come out with a pattern, you can be assured that the techniques that she has in there are really good. The finishing techniques that she has in there make for a very professional look on your product, and how she has things laid out, sewn, and cut are geared towards production. So it's usually quite different. With that being said, you need to know basic sewing and sewing terminology and different things when you get her patterns. So anyway, so this is the Nakoa backpack. It's a large backpack. It's very wide. It's a big bag. So the front has these two, it looks like two sets of pockets, but what it is, when you open it up, this is a slip pocket which goes all the way down and to the side. So you have this one big pocket that you slip in from here, right? And then you can put this and you can lock it up. This itself is just a flap. So there's this flap to this pocket, and then this is a flap. And you have a smaller slip pocket underneath that one. Isn't that neat? Really, really ingenious and nice way of putting the bag together. So this bag will put your top stitching to the test because A, it's everywhere, and B, you can't skip on it. You do not want to skimp on the top stitching anywhere on the bag, because it just, things don't lie as flat and as nice, and it doesn't give it that tight look to the bag. So and while I'm looking at it, I do have to say that this if you get up really close, you can see that when I I stitch to the edge of this, just past it, and then what I do is I angle and I do two stitches. My stitches on here were not really long, so it depends on the length of your stitch. I take two stitches at about a 45-degree angle, and then with my needle down, I pivot and I come up straight. And so I remembered when I made the lining, from this distance to this distance, you should count your stitches. So I took 5 stitches from there to there. And then after I did the 45-degree angle, I did the same 5 stitches at a straight, and then I did a 45-degree angle, and then when you do that, you actually, it looks better, because if you go straight and then you pivot, it's really hard on that one. Sometimes this line here you'll come out and it'll come slightly off and it's glaring, where this is much more forgiving. If you just do 1 or 2 stitches at a 45-degree angle, and then make sure that the straight stitches on the short edge are the same number as the stitches you took to make this on the step before when you put the pull-through lining. So if you have questions about that, you can ask me, but I'm not sure I could explain it a different way. So anyway, so that's that bag. So I think what Ellen wanted to know is, how do you get these tight every single time? Practice. Let's just put that out there. It takes practice, number one, but it's also technique as well. So you don't want to eyeball it or guess. So how I do is I use the foot of my machine, and I hold it exactly at the foot of the machine. So I do not have a industrial. I have a domestic. This particular bag was sewn entirely on this vintage Singer. The reason why I chose to do it on this Singer is that there's a portion of the bag, if you look right here, right, that's all sewn. Now I could make it a little easier if I had used webbing that wasn't as dense, and so it was, but this is what I had, and so I used it. But if you use webbing that's not as dense, you can compress it down a little bit. So basically you've got 2 layers of the vinyl, 2 layers of whatever your lining is, 3 layers of the webbing. Then over here, because that's folded again, 2 layers of vinyl, 2 layers of lining, and then additionally your zipper. And it's pretty thick, and I knew my other machine, I would not even be able to get it under the foot, right? So that's why I used the vintage. And I do have to say that I had to squeeze it under there. But once it was under, it was fine. So I use the edge of the foot. Other times when I do top stitching, I'll use a foot. I'll use an edge stitching foot, and I'll push it up to the edge underneath there, rather than trying to. I personally get much better results when I can push the fabric up against the edge of the foot that has a guard on it. Let me see. So this is what I'm saying, right? So this is the 1/4 inch foot, and when you put it under there, the fabric would actually be pushed up against that little black piece of metal. Or this is, right? So this, and then if you offset your needle over, if I feed things under there, I can really push it hard up against that guard and get, this will give me 1/8 of an inch. And that's nice on the top. It looks nice on certain top stitching to have a tight, tiny top stitching. I've tried it before where I just look and try to hold it, and it works, but with things like this, I had to do it because I was using this, but it can be really difficult. So anyway, so here's the pocket, right? So this is straight from the pattern, and it's just a technique that you might not be aware of. So you cut out the pattern piece and you get a rectangle or a square, whatever it is. And then whatever angle you want on your corners, you mark those, okay? So the pattern piece, that's the edge. And then you're gonna come in and you're gonna sew whatever your seam allowance is. So if you sew 1/4 inch, you're gonna stop right on, the needle should be down in that line. And then you're gonna make sure that when you put it down, so a vintage machine, you have to make sure it actually makes a stitch, right? So that's key too, is that when you put your needle down, you can't just put it in the fabric just a little bit. You have to make sure that this goes all the way down and up, so it makes a complete stitch on the corner. If See that? It didn't make a stitch, so it pulls out. So if you only put your needle down part way and then you pivot and then you try to sew, and then you're thinking, how come it didn't stay down in that corner and my thread pulled over at an angle? It's because when you put your needle down, you didn't actually engage an actual stitch. So again, if you have a very basic machine, like a vintage or another very basic machine that doesn't have, say, an auto down needle, because if you push the button and it goes auto down, it will actually go all the way down and make a stitch. You just have to make sure that this bar goes down and up. And if you're not sure if it's all the way up, just keep turning until you see it turn back around and start to come down. And then you know that that's one entire stitch. So when you put your needle down, make sure you actually make a stitch. Then pivot, and you're going to stitch right on the line. If you're making a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and you're going to stop 1/4 inch in, again, needle all the way down and make sure you're actually finishing the stitch. Pivot, make your 1/4 inch seam allowance, stop on the line. So stop on the line and then sew. And that will give you perfect lines. Then after you're done sewing, so pretend this is a stitch that got sewn, and this is a seam that got sewn, and then this is the line, right? So pretend it's there. The other key to doing it is when you come to the corners, and I did it on this corner so you could see it. When you trim your corner, you have to trim your corner. So you would cut it. So you would be doing it here and here. But pretend. So it's here. You would cut off that line close, very close. And then you're going to make an additional angle here, because all of that has to fit in there. So one, a lot of people don't trim close enough. Two, they don't do the additional taper here. And so what that will end up with is here in these corners, you'll have so much bulk that no matter how nice and neat your initial sewing was, it physically cannot be pushed out flat because there's too much bulk in there. And I can feel this, and you can see it. There's no lump of extra fabric in there, right? I used Twill the line, and then I used the vinyl. This style is slightly slouchy, so for the majority of the bag, that's it. There's no additional interfacing, and then I put something more substantial only on the bottom. So if you have a heavy-duty interfacing in here, you really have to make sure that it's away from where you're going to be doing the stitching, including your top stitching, because it's just too much bulk to make it really tight and flat when you do the top stitching. And just so happened when I was working with this, and because I was using this foot, I have purchased a Teflon foot, but I don't like it because you can see at the bottom how thick the foot is. It's twice as thick as this foot, and it reduces what I can put underneath here. So anyways, I just happen to have this. This is not magic. I just happen to have it next to me. And so I thought I would try it because I really didn't want the vinyl to stick at all. So I just dipped my finger in it. It's thick. I just patted my finger in it and I rubbed my fingers together so there wasn't a big blob. And then right where I was going to sew, I just very lightly, I just ran my finger over the vinyl so that this would not stick to it. And and then as soon as it came out, I just grabbed the cloth and just kind of buffed it off, and that worked like a dream. I would definitely test something beforehand to see if it has, especially like a metallic or extra, I don't know, extra painted type surface, that if you decide to put some kind of lotion or whatever, that you test it firsthand to make sure that the chemicals of this lotion or something don't eat away at the finish, because that would be horrible. But so that helped make it nice and smooth, and it was so fast to be able to just touch that if I felt it sticking just a little bit. And then my last tip for when you're sewing something sticky, so pretend this is sticky. If you're having trouble and it's just slightly sticky, and is to put as the least amount of contact between your project and the plate. So if it's sticking, instead of holding your thing here and trying to push it through, lift it so that there's only a small portion of the vinyl touching this. And a lot of times if it's sticking, all you have to do is lift this portion up right before the needle, and you'll find that it just starts to go through, no problem at all, because these feed dogs are pulling it through. But especially if your project is really big, it might not be able to pull through the weight of your project. So anyways, that's my tips for doing that. Let me know if you try it and if it works. And again, like I said, this is the Nakoa backpack pattern from Sew to Kind, and it is a challenging pattern as far as trying to wrap your mind around how things get put together, but the sewing itself is not difficult. And the only portion that would be difficult is here. Again, reduce the density of your straps, or you could additionally remove this and then just have this. This bag is set up like this to go instantly from a crossbody or shoulder bag to a backpack, and that's why there are these multiple things here. She's figured it out. So anyway, go buy the pattern, check it out, and learn something new. So anyways, if you found this helpful, let me know. Thanks. Bye.